Maybe you've experienced it. You care deeply about someone, but over time a wall of unspoken resentment has built up between you. Or you find yourself in the middle of an argument where both people are talking past each other and neither truly hears what the other is saying. Perhaps you even catch your own mind drifting off when a friend or colleague is speaking to you. These everyday situations show how easily communication can break down. Misunderstandings, feeling unheard, and unresolved conflicts can strain even our closest relationships. The good news is that communication isn't a fixed trait we either have or don't have. It's a set of skills we can learn and improve. In his book, People Skills, Robert Bolton outlines practical ways to overcome common communication problems and build healthier, more satisfying connections with others. By learning to listen actively, express ourselves assertively, resolve conflicts constructively, pay attention to body language, and stay aware of emotions, we can transform our daily interactions. This essay will explore these key people skills in a practical tone, focusing on how to apply them in daily communication, relationships, and social situations for real interpersonal growth. One of the most fundamental skills Bolton highlights is active listening. We often assume we're listening simply because we're hearing the other person's words, but listening is much more than that. Active listening means giving someone your full attention and engaging with what they're saying on a deeper level. In our fast-paced lives, it's common to only half listen. Perhaps you nod while already thinking of your response, or you get distracted by your phone. True listening requires slowing down and being present. It involves not just hearing the words, but also understanding the feelings and intentions behind those words. When you listen actively, the speaker can sense your genuine interest, and they feel respected and understood. Yet, many of us grow up without ever being taught how to listen well. In fact, we might have learned some bad habits that Bolton calls roadblocks to communication, common responses that actually hinder real understanding. Think about times someone shared a personal problem with you, and with good intentions you immediately offered advice. Here's what you should do. Or maybe you responded with a quick reassurance. Don't worry, it'll all be fine. Perhaps you changed the subject to something lighter, or even cracked a joke to avoid a serious discussion. You might have even judged them without meaning to, saying something like, "Well, you shouldn't feel that way," or "It's your own fault." These kinds of responses, giving unasked for advice, minimizing someone's feelings, abruptly changing topics, or criticizing, often shut people down. They are usually meant to help or protect the person, but they can make the speaker feel unheard or judged. For example, if your friend confides they're stressed about work and you immediately reply, "Lots of people have it worse, you'll get over it," they might feel that you don't understand or care about what they're going through. Bolton identified about a dozen of these communication roadblocks, including things like criticizing, name-calling, moralizing, "You should do this," excessive questioning, and diverting attention away from the speaker's concern. When someone runs into these roadblocks, they tend to become defensive, shut down, or feel even more alone with their problem. Recognizing and avoiding these common mistakes is the first step toward being a better listener. Practicing attentive listening. So what does good listening look like in practice? It starts with giving your undivided attention. This means if someone wants to talk, you pause whatever else you're doing, put down the phone, turn off the TV, and really focus on them. Physically, you can show you're listening by facing the person, making comfortable eye contact, and nodding or giving small acknowledgments like or "I see." These nonverbal cues and short verbal encouragers let the speaker know you're engaged. Try to adopt an open and receptive posture. Uncross your arms, relax your body, and maybe lean in slightly to show interest. Small actions like these demonstrate that you care about what they have to say. If your eyes are darting around the room or you're fiddling with something, the speaker may feel you're indifferent or impatient, even if you're hearing their words. Being present is a powerful part of listening. It tells the other person, "You matter to me, and right now I'm here with you." Another aspect of attentive listening is allowing the other person to guide the conversation at their own pace. We sometimes have the urge to jump in with solutions or questions, but a good listener holds back that impulse. Instead, practice what Bolton calls following the speaker. This means you refrain from interrupting or steering the discussion to your own concerns. You listen for what they find important. If the person pauses, you wait patiently. Sometimes a brief silence gives them space to gather their thoughts and continue. You can invite them to say more with gentle prompts or door openers. For example, if you notice your friend looks upset and has been quiet, you might say, "You seem a bit down today. Want to talk about it?" in a caring tone. If they're not ready to talk, don't push. Just let them know you're willing to listen whenever they are. And if they do start sharing, encourage them with simple phrases like, "I'm listening," or "Tell me more about that," or even just nods and "uh-huh." The key is to create a safe, non-judgmental atmosphere where the speaker feels comfortable opening up. Reflecting and understanding. Active listening isn't a completely passive act. It's a focused and engaged process. One powerful listening skill is called reflective listening. This is where you try to reflect back what the speaker has communicated, both in terms of content and feelings. Essentially, you act as a mirror so they can see their own thoughts and emotions more clearly. There are a few ways to do this. One way is to paraphrase, that is, summarize in your own words what the person just said. You don't have to repeat everything word for word. Instead, you capture the essence of their message. For example, if a coworker says, "I've been staying late every night this week to finish our project and I'm exhausted," you might respond, "Sounds like you've been working really hard and you're completely worn out." This kind of paraphrase shows that you heard them and understood the main point. It also helps clarify if you got it right. They can correct you if you missed something. Paraphrasing often makes the speaker feel validated because someone is truly absorbing what they're saying. Another aspect of reflective listening is acknowledging the feelings behind the words. What emotion do you sense the person is feeling? People don't always directly say, "I feel angry," or "I feel sad," but they often give clues. They might sound frustrated, or their body language might show disappointment. A good listener listens for those emotional cues. If your friend is telling you about an argument with their boss, they might be using angry words, or maybe they sound more hurt than mad. You could respond with a guess at the feeling. "It sounds like that really upset you," or "I can hear that you're angry about what happened." If you're right, the person will feel understood and often will elaborate more. If you're wrong, they might say, "No, I'm not angry. I'm more hurt than anything," which still moves the conversation forward and helps both of you understand better. Either way, you've shown that you care about their emotions. Reflecting feelings can be incredibly validating. It tells the speaker that not only do you hear their predicament, but you empathize with how it affects them. Sometimes combining the facts and the feelings into one summary, reflecting the meaning, is very effective. For instance, suppose your sister says, "I'm exhausted from work and the kids, and I feel like I have no time for myself." A reflective response might be, "You're feeling completely overwhelmed by all your responsibilities and it's really getting you down." In one sentence, you've acknowledged both the situation, lots of responsibilities, no free time, and the core feeling, overwhelmed, down. A response like this can help the speaker feel truly heard. It often leads them to clarify or go deeper because they sense you're trying to see the whole picture of what they're experiencing. To imagine the power of reflective listening, consider a scenario from daily life. Say you've had an absolutely awful day. Your car wouldn't start in the morning, you were late to an important meeting, then you spilled coffee on your shirt, and to top it off, you burned the dinner you were cooking. You're feeling frazzled and upset. Now you tell your partner about all this. If your partner responds with a joking tone, "Ha, when will you learn how to cook properly?" How would you feel? Probably irritated or hurt. They're ridiculing you when you're already down. That kind of comment is likely to make you shut down or snap back. But what if instead your partner comes over, puts a hand on your shoulder and says sincerely, "Wow, you've had a really rough day. First the car trouble, then that meeting, and now the dinner got burned. You must be exhausted and so frustrated. wouldn't you feel a wave of relief or comfort? In the second response, your partner isn't offering a solution or judging you. They're simply acknowledging what happened and how you likely feel. You'd probably feel understood, and that might actually ease some of your stress. You might reply, "Yeah, it was one thing after another today. I really am worn out." In that moment, the empathetic response from your partner has diffused your negative feelings. You know they get it. This example shows how reflecting someone's experience and feelings, rough day, you must be exhausted and frustrated, acts like an emotional balm. It's a simple technique, but it builds a sense of trust and connection. The power of silence and patience. An often overlooked part of listening is the power of silence. We tend to think we need to fill every gap in conversation, but in active listening, a little silence can be golden. When someone pauses because they're thinking or feeling emotional, giving them a moment of quiet can actually encourage them to continue or go deeper. It shows that you're not rushing them. If you jump in with your thoughts too quickly, you might derail their train of thought. But if you nod and wait, they often find the next words themselves. Silence also gives you, as the listener, a chance to process what's been said instead of immediately reacting. It prevents those knee-jerk responses that might not be helpful. For example, if your friend is struggling to articulate something painful and stops talking, just staying present and attentive, maybe offering a tissue if they're sad or just a compassionate look, can speak louder than any quick-fix comment. Your calm, patient presence says, "It's okay, take your time, I'm here." In fact, Bolton suggests that even simply being quiet and attentive is a valuable communication tool. Sometimes just listening, without saying much at all, is exactly what the other person needs. They might solve their own problems simply by feeling someone truly hears them. Benefits of active listening. When you practice active listening consistently, you'll likely notice some positive changes in your interactions. People open up more when they sense a good listener. Your friends or family members may start trusting you with their deeper thoughts because they know you won't rush to judge or dismiss them. Conflicts tend to de-escalate more quickly because feeling heard often softens a person's stance. A lot of anger and frustration in arguments comes from each person feeling that the other doesn't understand. If you can be the one to break that cycle by listening first, you set a calm tone for finding solutions. Active listening also helps avoid misunderstandings. How many times have we reacted to what we thought someone meant, only to find out we got it wrong? By paraphrasing and checking in, "So, are you saying that?" you catch those misunderstandings in real time. Moreover, showing empathy through listening strengthens your relationships. The people in your life feel valued and respected by you, and that builds a strong foundation of trust and caring. You might even find that others start listening better to you because you've set a great example of how supportive a real conversation can be. In short, listening well is like giving a gift to the speaker, the gift of being understood, and it enriches both of you. Asserting yourself, honest and respectful expression. Listening is vital, but communication is a two-way street. Just as we want to understand others, we also want to be understood. This is where assertiveness comes in, another key theme in Bolton's book. Assertiveness is about expressing your own thoughts, needs, and feelings openly and respectfully. Many of us struggle with this. We often swing to one of two extremes. We're either too passive, biting our tongue and not saying what we really think, or we go to the opposite extreme and become aggressive, expressing ourselves in a hostile or hurtful way. Neither extreme leads to healthy communication. If you're passive and never speak up, you end up feeling overlooked, resentful, or taken advantage of. If you're aggressive, yelling, insulting, or dominating, you might get your way temporarily, but at the cost of others' trust and respect. Assertiveness is the balanced middle ground. You stand up for yourself and communicate what you need or believe, but in a way that also respects the other person's perspective and dignity. It might help to paint a picture of these three styles, passive, aggressive, and assertive, to understand the differences. Imagine you're at a restaurant and the soup you ordered comes out cold. A passive response would be to say nothing, perhaps telling yourself, "Oh, it's fine, I don't want to make a fuss." You eat the cold soup even though you're unhappy with it. You avoid conflict, but you remain dissatisfied, maybe feeling a bit angry at yourself or the restaurant. An aggressive response would be to snap at the waiter. "This soup is cold. How dare you serve me this? You'd better fix it right now or I'm telling your manager." This approach might get the soup reheated, but it does so by putting down the waiter and creating a lot of tension. Now the waiter is likely upset or angry, and you've created bad feelings. An assertive response would be more measured and respectful. You could call the waiter over and say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but this soup is actually cold. Would you mind warming it up for me? I'd appreciate it." In this case, you're calmly stating the problem and what you want done without attacking anyone. The tone is polite but clear that you expect a solution. Usually the result is positive. The waiter warms up the soup and likely apologizes for the inconvenience, and you get what you need without drama. This simple example shows that assertiveness lies in expressing your needs clearly and kindly, neither meekly hiding them nor forcefully imposing them. In personal relationships, finding that sweet spot of assertiveness is crucial. Bolton describes assertiveness as the ability to honestly disclose your own needs and feelings to someone else in a straightforward way that doesn't trample on the other person. It means taking responsibility for what you feel and want, rather than expecting others to guess or automatically comply. It also means respecting that others have rights and needs too. So while you express yourself, you do it in a way that doesn't demean or attack the other person. For instance, saying, "I feel upset when you cancel our plans at the last minute" is assertive. Saying, "You are such an unreliable, inconsiderate person" is aggressive. Both statements convey that you're unhappy about the same situation, but one focuses on your feelings and invites a conversation, while the other blames and provokes an argument. From passive or angry to assertive. Many of us lean toward passivity or aggression because of habit or fear. If you're someone who tends to be passive, you might fear that speaking up will cause conflict or make people dislike you. You might have grown up believing it's polite to go along with what others want and not make waves. The problem is, over time, not expressing your true feelings can lead to internal resentment and even health issues like stress or anxiety. You might say yes to favors you don't actually have time for, or endure behavior from others that upsets you, all the while bottling up frustration. This repressed emotion often doesn't just vanish. It can surface later in unhealthy ways, or cause you to distance yourself from people you actually care about, just because you never told them how you felt. On the other hand, if you tend to react aggressively, you might believe that's the only way to be heard or get results. Perhaps you've learned that raising your voice or using force works in the short term, but aggressiveness backfires too. It pushes people away. Friends or coworkers may start avoiding you or walking on eggshells around you. They may comply with your demands, but out of fear or resentment, not genuine willingness. Aggression can damage trust and create a hostile atmosphere. Assertiveness offers a healthier path. It's about confidence with courtesy. When you're assertive, you communicate that you respect yourself and the other person. You're saying, "My thoughts and needs matter, and so do yours." This balance tends to create mutual respect. Interestingly, people who are assertive often feel higher self-esteem because they see that they have control over their own lives and can communicate without guilt or fear. At the same time, their relationships often improve because others know where they stand and don't feel attacked by them. Being assertive can actually prevent a lot of conflicts or misunderstandings from escalating, since issues are addressed early and openly rather than stewing beneath the surface. How to communicate assertively. Assertiveness is a skill that can be learned like any other. One very practical technique Bolton suggests is using I statements instead of you statements. This shifts the focus to your experience rather than casting blame. A classic formula for an assertive statement is, "I feel X when you Y because Z." Let's break that down. X is the emotion you feel, Y is the specific behavior or situation that is affecting you, and Z is the reason or outcome that explains why it matters to you. For example, Imagine your roommate often leaves the kitchen a mess and it's bothering you. A confrontational you statement might be, "You are so messy and lazy. You never clean up and I'm tired of it." That approach is likely to put your roommate on the defensive and start a fight. Now consider an assertive I statement. "I feel frustrated when I come home and see dirty dishes left in the sink because I end up having to clean them before I can cook my own dinner." In this assertive statement, you're calmly describing the behavior, dirty dishes left in the sink, without exaggeration or insult. You're stating honestly how it makes you feel, frustrated, and explaining why it's an issue. It creates extra work for you when you're hungry and just want to cook. You're not attacking your roommate's character. You're bringing up a specific problem. This invites cooperation. Your roommate is more likely to respond, "Oh, I didn't realize it was affecting you that much. I'll try to do better," rather than getting angry or defensive. In fact, because you explained your need to have a clean space to cook and not do double chores, your roommate can empathize rather than feel accused. To be assertive, it's also important to be specific and focused on behaviors, not make personal attacks. Notice in the example saying, "When I see dirty dishes in the sink," is specific. Saying "you're messy and lazy" is a broad insult. Sticking to the specific action that's a problem makes it clear what needs to change without shaming the person. It's also helpful to mention the outcome you'd like, if appropriate. In the example, you might add something like, "Could we come up with a plan to make sure we both clean up after ourselves in the kitchen? I think that would really help me not feel so stressed in the evenings." Now you're not only asserting your need, you're also moving toward a solution collaboratively. How you say something can be as important as what you say. An assertive message can be undermined if delivered with a sneer or a shout, for instance. When practicing assertiveness, aim for a tone that is firm and clear, but also calm and polite. You don't need to apologize for what you feel. That would be more on the passive side, but you also don't want to sound menacing, which veers into aggression. For example, stating your point in a steady voice with a neutral or friendly expression will be far more effective than speaking the same words while rolling your eyes or using a sarcastic tone. Your body language should also match the assertive stance. Stand or sit up straight to project confidence, face the person, and maintain comfortable eye contact. Avoid pointing fingers or invading their personal space aggressively, but also avoid nervously looking at the floor or fidgeting, which can undermine your message. If you come across as confident and respectful, your words are more likely to be taken seriously. The person will feel that you mean what you say, but you're not out to harm them. For instance, telling your teenager, "I need you to be home by 10 p.m. because I worry about your safety," in a calm, caring tone with a hand on their shoulder, sends a very different message than yelling the same words from across the room with an angry face. Assertiveness is about the whole package of communication. Words, tone, and body language all aligned, conveying clarity and respect. Handling reactions and staying assertive. It's worth noting that even when you communicate assertively, the other person might not immediately react calmly or positively. They might still get defensive or upset. After all, if you're bringing up a problem or setting a boundary, it can touch a nerve. Bolton acknowledges that it's quite normal for someone to respond defensively when confronted with something they did that bothers you. The key is what you do next. Imagine you use the assertive approach with your roommate about the dirty dishes, and your roommate replies angrily, "Oh, so now I'm the bad guy? You leave stuff around too sometimes, you know." This defensive retort can tempt you to snap back, "That's not true," or escalate into an argument about who is messier. But instead of falling into a shouting match, you can use your listening skills here. Yes, that's right. Even in the middle of asserting yourself, you may need to switch back into listening mode for a bit. If the other person reacts defensively, let them vent and really listen to what they're saying. Maybe your roommate is feeling accused and wants to point out they're not the only one who's ever left a mess. You might respond with a reflective listening approach. "It sounds like you feel I'm unfairly blaming you, and you remember times I wasn't perfect either." This doesn't mean you abandon your point. It just means you're acknowledging their feelings, too. Often, when people feel heard, their defensiveness calms down. So in this case, once your roommate feels you understand their perspective, yes, I guess I do feel that way, they may be more ready to discuss the real issue calmly. Then you can reassert your own need. I get it. Neither of us is perfectly neat all the time. I'm not trying to blame everything on you. I do want us to find a better system because I really have been feeling stressed coming home to a messy kitchen. Maybe we can both be more mindful and help each other keep it clean. Here you've balanced listening to their concern and still stood up for your own. Bolton suggests that effective assertion can sometimes be a bit of a back-and-forth dance. You assert, they defend, you listen, then assert again, and so on, gradually working through the issue. The important part is not to slip into aggression, for example by retaliating with insults if they get defensive, and not to slip back into passive silence by giving up your point entirely when they push back. By staying calm and respectful, and by using your listening skills in the midst of confrontation, you guide the interaction toward mutual understanding. Building solutions together. Often an assertive conversation will lead to a solution or compromise that works for both people. After expressing needs and listening to each other, the next step might be problem solving. For instance, in the scenario with your roommate, the solution might be as simple as agreeing on who washes dishes on which days, or a rule that everyone cleans their own dishes before going to bed. In more emotionally charged situations, the solution might involve addressing deeper needs. Let's say you told your partner, "I feel lonely when you come home," and immediately start working on your laptop because I value our evening time together. Perhaps after some discussion, the solution you agree on is setting a rule that weeknights from 6 to 7 p.m. are us time with no work. In each case, being assertive about your feelings and needs opens the door to fix the issue in a practical way. The wonderful thing about assertiveness is that it doesn't just unload frustration, it actually seeks a positive change while keeping the relationship intact. Instead of harboring silent resentment or exploding in anger, you're inviting the other person to work with you on making things better. Conflict resolution, turning disagreements into collaboration. Even in the best relationships, conflicts and disagreements are bound to happen. We're all unique individuals with our own opinions, habits, and desires, so it's natural that we won't see eye to eye on everything. The goal, then, is not to avoid conflict entirely, that's impossible, but to handle conflicts in a productive and respectful way. Bolton emphasizes that with the right skills, conflicts can actually bring people closer, because working through a disagreement can increase mutual understanding and trust. Think about times when you resolved a tough issue with a friend or loved one. Often you come out of it feeling like the relationship is stronger because you survived the storm together and learned more about each other. On the flip side, conflicts handled poorly, with screaming matches, cold shoulders, or unresolved grudges, can do serious damage. So how do we aim for the positive outcome rather than the destructive one? A constructive approach to conflict starts with mindset. Instead of seeing the other person as an adversary to beat, try to see them as a partner in solving a common problem. It's not you versus me, it's us versus the problem. This shift in attitude makes a huge difference. It means both people ultimately want a resolution that works, rather than one winning at the other's expense. To use a simple example, imagine two siblings fighting over a single tablet device. Both want to use it at the same time. A win-lose mindset would have them each trying to grab it or prove why they deserve it more. A collaborative mindset would have them step back and say, "Okay, we both need the tablet. How can we work this out?" Perhaps they agree to time slots or find another device. The point is, with collaboration, both have a chance to get their needs met, at least partially. Steps to resolve a conflict. Bolton outlines a general approach to conflict resolution that centers on respect, listening, and assertive expression, essentially combining all the skills we've discussed. The first step in a tense situation is to treat the other person with respect, even if you're angry or disagree strongly. This is crucial. If you start off with insults or contempt, the conflict will likely escalate and any productive discussion goes out the window. Respect can be shown through tone, no yelling or sneering, through words, no name-calling or belittling, and through body language, no aggressive posturing like finger-pointing right in their face. It might even be something simple like suggesting, "I value our friendship, so let's try to sort this out," which signals that you care about the relationship despite the disagreement. Next, it's incredibly important to listen to the other person's side. Really listen, as we discussed earlier, until you genuinely understand where they're coming from. This can be hard when you also have a lot to say, but often the quickest way to diffuse a conflict is to let one person vent while the other listens, and then switch. You might set a mutual rule. "Okay, you go first and tell me how you see it. I won't interrupt. Then I'll share my perspective." When it's your turn to listen, try to hear not just their complaints, but the underlying feelings and needs. Use your active listening techniques. Paraphrase their main points and acknowledge their emotions. You might be tempted to rebut everything they say immediately, but hold off. Make sure they feel heard first. "So you're upset because you feel I haven't been keeping my promises, and that makes you not trust me. I understand why you feel hurt by that." Only when someone feels that you truly grasp their perspective will they be ready to hear your side. After, and only after, you've listened thoroughly, the next step is asserting your own viewpoint. Briefly and calmly state your feelings, needs, or stance on the issue. Since you just modeled good listening, the other person is more likely to now extend you the same courtesy. You might say, "I appreciate you explaining that. I'd like to share how I see it from my end." Using I statements here is very helpful to avoid sounding accusatory. For example, "I felt frustrated when you didn't show up on time to our meeting because I was waiting for an hour and it threw off my schedule." That's more effective than, "You are always late and you ruin my whole day," which would likely reignite their defensiveness. By putting it in terms of your feelings and specific effects, you're simply adding your piece of the puzzle for them to understand. This respectful exchange, each person listening empathically and then sharing their own side, often works wonders. It's not that all disagreements magically disappear, but the emotional heat usually drops. Both parties feel like, "Okay, at least I got to say how I feel and I know they heard me." In many cases, this process alone softens people's stances. You might find that once emotions are expressed and acknowledged, the actual problem is easier to solve because the anger or hurt isn't clouding the discussion as much. Sometimes you even realize the conflict was partly a misunderstanding. For instance, you thought your friend ignored your calls on purpose and were angry, but after listening, you learned they were swamped with a family emergency. Even if you still disagree on some points, you've cleared the air emotionally. Finding win-win solutions. When the conflict is about differing needs or a practical dilemma and not just a misunderstanding, the final part of conflict resolution is to problem solve together. This is where you move from understanding the issue to taking action to resolve it. A great approach is collaborative problem solving, which involves a few cooperative steps. 1. Define the problem in terms of needs, not positions. A position is what each person says they want, often a fixed solution, whereas a need is the underlying interest or necessity they have. For example, two coworkers might clash because both want the same day off, positions. But if you look at needs, one might need that day off for a medical appointment and the other wanted it for a family event. Defining the problem as, "We both have important reasons to be off on the same day," is more flexible than, "We both insist on taking March 3rd off." It sets the stage for finding an alternative way to meet both needs if possible. 2. Brainstorm possible solutions without immediately critiquing them. Both people throw out as many ideas as they can, even if they seem a bit wild. Judgment is put aside at this stage. You're just exploring options. Using the day off example, brainstorming might yield ideas like asking the manager if the schedule can be adjusted, both not taking that day but splitting shifts, finding someone else to cover, moving one of the appointments to another day if possible, and so on. When brainstorming, quantity is good. You never know which idea might inspire a workable compromise. 3. Evaluate the options together and choose one that works for both. Once you have a list of ideas, discuss the pros and cons of each calmly. You're looking for a win-win solution, one that addresses both parties' core needs as much as possible. Let's say one idea was that one coworker swaps days with another colleague. If that satisfies both, one can attend the family event, the other can do the appointment the next week, and the colleague who swaps is okay with it, then great. Sometimes you might combine ideas or adjust one to make it acceptable. The goal is that both people say, yes, this solution works for me. 4. Plan and implement the solution. It's important to be clear on the details. Who will do what and when? If we continue our example, perhaps the solution is that coworker A will take the original day off for their family event, and coworker B will take a different day off for their appointment. The plan could involve talking to the boss to approve this change, and maybe coworker B agrees to cover a shift for coworker A later as a thank you. Writing down the agreement, or at least repeating it back to each other, can ensure you both understand it the same way. 5. Follow up later to see how it's going. Especially for ongoing arrangements, it's wise to check in and make sure the solution is actually working and meeting both people's needs. If not, you can tweak it or try another idea. In our example, after the fact, they might check in. Was everything okay with that schedule change? Did it inconvenience you, or was it fine? If one person feels it wasn't fair, they can discuss adjusting the arrangement for next time. This step keeps communication open and shows that both sides are committed to fairness and understanding, even after the heat of the conflict has passed. While this structured approach might sound formal, it can be adapted naturally to everyday life. For instance, consider a couple trying to decide how to spend their limited budget on leisure. One wants to save for a vacation, the other wants to buy a new TV. Using these principles, they discuss why each thing is important. Underlying needs: one needs a break, travel experience, the other values home entertainment. Brainstorm options, maybe a shorter trip and a smaller TV, or find extra income, etc., and agree on a plan that gives each a bit of what they want. The exact solution matters less than the cooperative spirit behind it. Both people end up feeling respected and involved in the decision, rather than one winning and the other losing. Keeping emotions in check during conflict. It's worth mentioning that conflict discussions can become emotionally charged, and when emotions run high, all these nice skills can fly out the window if we're not careful. Part of good conflict resolution is managing our own emotions and helping the other person not feel overwhelmed by theirs. Emotional awareness, which we'll delve into more shortly, plays a big role here. If you notice that a discussion is getting too heated, it's okay, and often wise, to suggest a short break. I know this is important to both of us, but I can sense we're both getting upset. Maybe let's take a breather and come back to it in half an hour. A little time apart can allow anger or anxiety to cool down, so you can resume talking more calmly. Also, be aware of triggers like language that can escalate things. Using absolutes like "you never" or "you always" can make someone see red, because they're rarely true and feel like a personal attack. It's more fair and effective to say often or sometimes if you must generalize. I feel like sometimes my contributions are overlooked, rather than "you never appreciate anything I do." Avoiding character attacks, like calling someone lazy, selfish, etc., is crucial. Stick to behavior and impact. If they start yelling or name-calling, try not to mirror that behavior. Raising your voice to match theirs usually just fuels the fire. Instead, you might respond in a calm but firm voice. "I want to discuss this without yelling. I'm listening to you, and I'd appreciate the same respect." Often, if one person can maintain composure, the other will gradually mirror that calmer tone, especially once they realize you're not fighting against them, but trying to work with them. Finally, know that sometimes the resolution is to agree to disagree, especially with conflicts of values or opinions. And that can be okay if done with respect. If two friends fundamentally disagree on, say, a political issue, a resolution might not mean one convinces the other. It might simply mean each has fully heard the other's perspective, they acknowledge their difference, and they choose to respect each other anyway. They might set a boundary like, We won't discuss that topic when we hang out, since we know we differ, focusing instead on the many other things they share in common. Even that outcome is a form of conflict resolution. The conflict doesn't vanish, but it ceases to be a source of friction in the relationship. The unspoken conversation. Throughout all these skills, listening, asserting, and handling conflict, there's a parallel form of communication happening beyond words: body language and nonverbal cues. Bolton reminds us that how we communicate often speaks louder than what we say. You might have the best intentions and the perfect words scripted out, but if your tone of voice or body posture sends a different message, you could still run into trouble. Being mindful of body language, both yours and the other person's, can greatly improve understanding in daily interactions. Consider a scenario. You're saying, "I'm listening to someone," but meanwhile you're scrolling on your phone or staring off into space. Your words say one thing, but your body says, "I don't care." Similarly, if you tell your partner, "I'm not angry," but your arms are crossed, your jaw is clenched, and you're slamming cabinet doors, guess which message is believed? Not the verbal one. To communicate effectively, aim for congruence. Align your body language with your words. When listening, this means showing attentiveness, facing the person, nodding, maintaining a receptive expression. If a friend is telling you something emotional and you maintain soft eye contact and lean slightly toward them, you're signaling empathy. If instead you're glancing at your watch or your feet are pointed toward the door as if you're ready to bolt, they'll likely feel you're not truly present. Nonverbal cues are also a valuable source of information when you're the listener. People don't always articulate their feelings, but their bodies often give hints. If you're talking to your child about their day, and you notice their shoulders slump and eyes drop when they mention a certain class, that's a sign something in that class might be bothering them, even if they say, "It's fine." You might gently probe, "I noticed you looked a little sad when talking about math class. Is everything okay there?" This shows you're paying attention not just to their words, but to them as a whole. In conflict, noticing body language is equally key. Maybe during a discussion with your spouse, you see them rubbing their temples and avoiding eye contact. They could be feeling overwhelmed or hurt. That might be a cue for you to soften your tone or ask, "How are you feeling about all this? I know it's a lot." On the flip side, be aware of what your own nonverbal signals might be conveying in tense moments. An eye roll can be like a spark on gasoline in an argument. It radiates contempt. A pointing finger can feel accusatory. Sometimes even unintended gestures can be misread, so it helps to actively choose calming body language. If you're upset, you might consciously keep your hands relaxed at your sides or on the table instead of jabbing the air. You might nod as the other person speaks to show you're still listening, even if you disagree. Body language is also a tool for de-escalation. If a discussion is getting heated and the other person is physically showing aggression, raised voice, invading your space, intense stare, you can counter that by staying physically open and non-threatening. This might mean keeping your voice measured, your palms open or resting, not clenched, and even sitting down if the other person is standing. This can sometimes diffuse a confrontational vibe by literally lowering the height and slowing things. Using a calm, steady gaze, not a glare, just meeting their eyes with concern, can help convey, "I'm here with you, not against you." People subconsciously pick up on these cues. Think of how two animals might size each other up. Humans have similar instincts. If one person softens, the other often unconsciously softens a bit too. Don't forget cultural differences. Eye contact or gestures can mean different things in different cultures. But as a general rule within any given context, paying attention to and mirroring the other's appropriate body language can build rapport. For example, if your friend is speaking softly and slowly because they're upset, responding in a similar gentle tone, rather than, say, a loud, rapid-fire reply, will make them feel more at ease. We often intuitively mirror people we're in sync with. You can also consciously use this technique to foster connection, as long as it's subtle and genuine. In everyday life, improving your body language awareness might be as simple as doing a mental check during conversations. What is my face doing? Am I frowning or smiling? Am I turned toward this person or away? What might my posture be signaling? Over time, you become more naturally attuned to these signals. This makes you not only a better communicator, but also someone people feel comfortable around, because you're sending reassuring nonverbal messages. Remember, a warm smile, a friendly tone, a nod of understanding, these small nonverbal gestures can sometimes communicate caring even better than words can. Emotional awareness, the heart of interaction. Underlying all communication is the realm of emotion. Every conversation has an emotional subtext, whether it's obvious or subtle. Emotional awareness means being mindful of these feelings, both your own and those of others, and it's a thread that runs through all of Bolton's people skills. Why are emotions so important? Because they drive how we interpret messages and how we respond. You might have the most logical argument in the world, but if the person you're talking to feels embarrassed or attacked, they won't be receptive. Similarly, you might think you're just stating a fact, but if you're feeling angry when you say it, that emotion colors your words, and others will react more to the emotion than to the fact. Being aware of emotions starts with self-awareness. It helps to regularly check in with yourself, especially in charged interactions. What am I feeling right now? Am I getting angry, anxious, defensive? If you realize that, for example, you're feeling very angry in a discussion, that's a cue to be careful. Strong anger might push you to say something hurtful or raise your voice. With that awareness, you might decide to pause the conversation and cool off, or at least take a deep breath and speak slower to maintain control. Some people find it useful to literally name the emotion to themselves. I'm feeling hurt, or I'm really nervous about this. Naming it can have a calming effect and give you a bit of distance from the intensity, almost as if you're observing it rather than being swept up in it. You can then choose to communicate that feeling assertively if appropriate. I have to say, I'm feeling pretty upset about this situation. That's more constructive than letting the feeling hijack your behavior, like suddenly snapping at the other person without explaining why. Empathy is the flip side of this, being aware of others' emotions. This is where all the active listening skills we described come into play. Paying attention to tone, words, and body language that signal how someone else is feeling. If you're in conversation and you sense the other person is uncomfortable or sad, acknowledging it can greatly deepen the communication. Even a simple, "I sense this topic is really painful for you," can make the person feel seen on an emotional level. Sometimes we fear bringing up someone's emotion. What if I upset them more? But often the opposite happens. They feel relief that you noticed and cared. Emotional awareness in others also means being patient and compassionate. If your normally cheerful friend is short and irritable one day, instead of taking offense, emotional awareness might lead you to think, she seems stressed, maybe something happened. You might then ask kindly if everything's all right, rather than snapping back at her tone. This sensitivity to moods and feelings helps prevent unnecessary conflicts and shows people you care about them beyond surface words. One practical way to fine-tune your emotional awareness in daily conversation is to listen for feeling words and watch for nonverbal cues together. If someone says, "I just don't know if I can handle all of this," they might not explicitly say they're overwhelmed or scared, but you can infer those feelings. Look at their face. Are their eyes teary, sadness? Is their voice trembling, maybe fear or anxiety? Once you pick up on a likely feeling, you can respond to it. It sounds like it's all really overwhelming for you. Or I can imagine how stressful that must be, feeling like too much is on your plate. This circles back to reflective listening, but specifically targeting the emotional content. Doing this not only helps the other person feel understood, it also helps them understand themselves better. Sometimes people are upset but haven't put their finger on exactly what they're feeling until someone gently reflects it. Yes, they might reply, "I am completely overwhelmed. That's exactly it." And now that it's out in the open, they might even feel a bit better or more ready to tackle the issue. Emotional awareness also plays a big role in conflict and assertiveness. If you're addressing a conflict, focusing on emotions first can be key to resolution. Bolton suggests that in an emotional conflict, You might need to let each other vent those feelings, anger, hurt, etc., and acknowledge them before trying to solve anything. For example, if a couple is arguing about one person spending too much time at work, underneath that might be one person's feeling of loneliness and the other's feeling of pressure to provide. Recognizing those feelings, I understand you feel lonely and I feel pressured, can create empathy on both sides. Each realizes the other isn't just being difficult. There's a real emotion driving their behavior. That empathy makes it easier to then find solutions, maybe schedule dedicated time together, or discuss how to balance responsibilities. In assertiveness, knowing your own emotions helps you communicate them clearly. I feel hurt that I wasn't invited, rather than acting them out indirectly or exploding later. It also helps you distinguish between different feelings. Sometimes what's on the surface, anger, is fueled by something deeper, hurt or fear. If you can identify that deeper feeling, you might express the situation very differently and more effectively. Lastly, emotional awareness encourages kindness and patience in all interactions. When you keep in mind that everyone, including yourself, has emotions swirling beneath the surface, you may give others a bit more grace. The coworker who snapped at you might be dealing with a family crisis. The friend who seems aloof might be feeling insecure or depressed. This doesn't mean you let people treat you poorly, but it means you consider the human context. You might ask, "Hey, you seem a bit down lately. Anything on your mind?" That question could open a door for them to talk about feelings they were holding in. In essence, emotional awareness makes communication personal. It's not just exchanging information, it's two human beings connecting with empathy and authenticity. Bringing it all together. We've explored active listening, assertive expression, conflict resolution, body language, and emotional awareness as distinct topics, but in reality they all weave together in day-to-day life. Good communication is a kind of dance that uses all these elements in tandem. Imagine an everyday scenario, like a family dinner discussion about planning a weekend trip. One person might be quietly unhappy because they feel their ideas are always ignored. This is an emotional undercurrent. If everyone at the table is practicing their people skills, someone will notice the quiet person's body language, maybe they're withdrawn, and gently draw them out. "Hey, you look like you have something on your mind about this. What do you think we should do for the trip?" That's showing awareness and inviting them to speak, active listening even before they talk. That person then asserts, perhaps a bit timidly, "Well, I actually was hoping we could do something different than our usual beach day. I feel like my suggestions don't get much attention." Now the others have a chance to listen to that and reflect. "I hear you. You're saying you'd like us to consider a different kind of activity, and you're feeling a bit left out of the decision-making. Thanks for telling us. We want you to enjoy the trip too. What did you have in mind?" This opens up a collaborative dialogue where conflict, different preferences for the trip, is resolved by acknowledging the feeling left out, and then brainstorming a plan that includes everyone's input. Maybe they agree to try a new hiking spot instead of the beach, or split time between activities. Throughout this, body language and tone remain respectful, and each person's needs are taken into account. The formerly quiet person now feels heard and valued. The rest of the family avoids a situation where someone would have silently gone along and been unhappy, or blown up later, and the group likely ends up with a weekend plan that's more satisfying for all. This little scenario showcases how all the skills reinforce each other. Listening finds out the real issues, assertiveness brings feelings and needs into the open, empathy smooths the way, and collaboration finds solutions. In workplaces, friendships, romantic relationships, and even casual interactions with strangers, these skills apply just the same. For example, at work, you might use active listening in a meeting to really understand a colleague's proposal, assertiveness to voice your concerns about a project deadline, conflict resolution to address a disagreement in a team about strategy, body language to show confidence during a presentation, and emotional awareness to support a coworker who seems stressed. In friendship, you use listening when your friend needs to vent, Assertiveness if you need to set a boundary, like telling a friend you can't always answer calls late at night. Conflict resolution when there's a misunderstanding. Body language, like giving a reassuring hug or a warm smile when they're sad. And emotional awareness to notice if they're feeling down or anxious. Growing your people skills. These communication skills, as straightforward as they sound, do take practice. It's one thing to understand the ideas, and quite another to apply them consistently in the heat of real life. Don't be discouraged by that. Every small step or success is progress on what Bolton would describe as an interpersonal growth journey. You might start by focusing on one skill at a time. Perhaps this week you decide to practice active listening whenever you get the chance. Put away distractions and really tune in to people. You may be amazed at what you learn and how people respond. Maybe next week you make a point to express yourself more directly, picking one situation where you've been holding something in and deciding to address it calmly with an I statement. The more you practice, the more natural these skills become. Over time, you'll likely notice fewer petty arguments and more quickly resolved issues in your life. You might find that people comment on how easy you are to talk to or how calm you remain under pressure. It's also important to be patient and forgiving with yourself and others in this learning process. We're all human and will slip up. Even with all your knowledge, you might catch yourself interrupting someone or getting defensive when criticized. That's okay. When you catch it, you can course correct. Maybe you apologize and say, "Sorry, I cut you off. Please continue. I want to listen." Or if you snapped at your partner, later you might say, "I'm sorry I raised my voice. I was feeling hurt, but I didn't handle it well. Can we try that conversation again?" In fact, using these skills to repair a communication breakdown after it happens is another great application. A sincere apology, taking responsibility for your part, and a willingness to try again are powerful communicative acts too. They show emotional maturity and a commitment to good communication. Remember that improving people's skills is a continuous process, not a one-time fix. Bolton himself would likely agree that even experts have to keep practicing. But every day provides opportunities. Every conversation, every conflict, every time someone shares news or feelings, every time you feel something strongly, these are chances to apply what you've learned. Over time, what initially might feel a bit deliberate or awkward, what paraphrase should I use here? Or let me remember to use an I statement, becomes more second nature. You start doing it without thinking so consciously. The rewards of better communication. As you cultivate these skills, the payoff can be profound. Your relationships can become richer and more resilient. Misunderstandings that might have driven wedges between people get cleared up. Problems that could have lingered and grown into bitterness are addressed and resolved. You may notice that you're less anxious about bringing things up with others because you trust yourself to handle the discussion in a respectful way, and you've seen that it usually turns out far better than ignoring issues. Others might start confiding in you more, sensing your empathy and listening ear. At work, you might find teamwork improves and you navigate disagreements more professionally, which can even boost productivity and job satisfaction. In your personal life, family and friends may feel more appreciated and understood, leading to a warmer atmosphere around you. Perhaps most importantly, you develop a greater sense of confidence and peace within yourself. Knowing that you can handle tough conversations or emotional situations gives you a kind of quiet confidence. You no longer dread conflict or feedback as much as you might have in the past because you have tools to deal with them. Improving communication skills also contributes to personal growth. You become more empathetic, learning to see the world through others' eyes. You become more self-aware, recognizing your own patterns and triggers. Interpersonal challenges that once seemed impossible might become interesting puzzles to solve together with others. In a sense, you become a leader by example, influencing those around you to communicate more openly and kindly as well. It's not an exaggeration to say that these skills can be life-changing. Think of a couple on the brink of divorce due to years of poor communication who learned to truly listen and assert without attacking. It can save their marriage. or a parent and teenager locked in conflict who start communicating with empathy, it can repair that precious relationship. Even on a smaller scale, being able to calmly discuss and resolve a conflict with a friend can save a friendship that otherwise would have drifted away over a misunderstanding. In conclusion, the essence of Robert Bolton's people skills is that communicating effectively is both an art and a skill set that anyone can practice and improve. By listening actively, we make others feel valued and understood. By speaking assertively, we ensure our own voice is heard without harming others. By resolving conflicts with empathy and collaboration, we turn potential relationship wreckers into opportunities for greater understanding. By being mindful of body language, we align our messages and catch the unspoken truths in our interactions. And by remaining emotionally aware, we connect on a human level and show compassion in communication. These tools help us navigate daily communication, from the most casual chat to the most heated argument, with more ease and clarity. They help us build trust, solve problems, and grow closer to the people in our lives. Every conversation is a chance to practice these skills. Over time, you'll likely find that not only do your relationships improve, but you yourself become more confident, empathetic, and emotionally balanced. Instead of dreading difficult talks or feeling helpless when misunderstandings arise, you'll approach them with a sense of, okay, we can work this out. And even when things don't go perfectly, because no one communicates perfectly all the time, you'll have the resilience to step back and try again. Interpersonal growth is a continuous journey, but it's a deeply rewarding one. The effort you put into communicating better pays off in the form of deeper friendships, happier family life, more harmony at work, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing you handled things the best way you could. So next time you find yourself in a tricky conversation, maybe a friend is upset, or you need to bring up a problem, or a conflict is brewing, remember these people skills. Take a breath, listen fully, speak honestly and kindly. Notice the nonverbal signs, acknowledge the feelings in the room. By doing so, you're not just talking or hearing, you're truly connecting. And that connection built on understanding and respect is what healthy communication is all about. Each day, with each interaction, you have the opportunity to practice these skills and gradually transform your relationships and social interactions. It's a practical, lifelong pursuit, one that leads to stronger bonds with others and continuous interpersonal growth.